And then now, this is actually one of the important things to take from this fundamental analysis. Central bank tools. Central bank now have its tools which they use to control or regulate the economy. When I talk about regulate the economy, they have various sectors. They have their mandate, which is price stability, inflation, exchange rate policies, and price stability. So they use these tools to attain those objectives. So interest rate, when inflation is on the rise, the central bank now have to come in to regulate inflation, let inflation not get too high. They'll either use one of these tools to regulate the inflation. So have interest rates, raise it to control inflation and curb overspending, lower it to encourage spending and bolster economy. Then now have quantitative easing, implement QE to pump money into the economy, aka printing money. So, and then we have language. They can speak in dovish or hawkish tones to affect the value of the currency. So now, going back to interest rates. How does the central bank use interest rates to control inflation or to cut down inflation? So as of our last class, I was explaining that in the Western world or in the developed countries, most businesses originate from loans. Most businesses take loans to set up, and yes, like they are in debt. So interest rate is going to play a great role of how much they are going to have at the end of the day to spend. So let me say, if inflation is on the rise, that means there is a lot of money in the economy. People are getting paid very well. Employment is doing fine. People are employed, so there's enough cash in hand to spend. And then when people are spending, it's going to lead to a rise in inflation. It's going to lead in rise in prices of goods and services, and that's inflation. So but then how will the central bank do to cut down inflation? They'll have to reduce the amount of money in circulation, make money to be difficult to get. So when money is difficult to get, people are definitely going to cut down their spending, because they'll not have enough money in hand to spend for leisure, or they'll have to bargain prices, So, and a lot of bargain is going to cause the prices to drop, even if it's small. But then when everybody's coming and bargaining, there is not enough demand as it used to be. Suppliers, retailers, they'll be forced to maybe reduce prices a bit to encourage spending. So central bank can raise interest rate to cut inflation by increasing interest rate. When you increase interest rate, money becomes expensive. How will money be expensive? Suppliers, business owners, CEOs that they are in debt, they'll have now less amount of money to spend. Maybe they'll have to fire their workers, or maybe they'll have to reduce salaries. Because let me say you took a loan. By the time you took that loan, interest rate was at 3%, and the total output of your business is 5%, and now interest rate have claimed to maybe 4%, 4.5 or 5%. You discover that you don't have enough money to pay yourself and to pay your workers. So now you have to normally struggle to control the situation. Maybe you have to fire some people, or you have to cut down their salaries, or sometimes business owners will not even pay their workers because they don't have enough money in hand, which is going to cut down spending. And unemployment is going to increase, which is actually going to cut down the way people are spending, and as a result, inflation is going to drop. So that's just how they use interest rates to cut down inflation or boost inflation. And then vice versa, when inflation is too low, that is getting into recession, the central bank has to raise inflation, has to make prices of goods and services to increase. Now they'll cut interest rate. They'll reduce interest rates. Maybe it was at 5%, they can reduce it down to 3%, which is going to encourage borrowing. People who have business ideas, who were looking for money to maybe like establish their business, the ones who are looking for money to expand, they will now see that as a good period for them to go and take loans, expand their business, and expand to encourage spending, because when people are employed, they are going to spend more. And then now maybe they are going to actually increase salaries. There are going to be some bonuses and all of that. which is going to actually give, enough cash to the citizens, and they will now be able to spend, which is actually now going to raise inflation, because now there will be less bargaining, there will be high demand and all of that, which is going to increase prices. When there is high demand for a certain product, it causes prices to go up. If you're selling something and there's high demand and people don't bargain the prices, you just say the amount and they just pay, you'll be persuaded over time to increase your price a little bit. And that's how the central bank does to raise inflation or raise prices of goods and services.